the future is always on time when we leave the weight of the past behind for the gifts of the present. Okay, and I wrote that to myself in a jail cell.
Welcome to the Focal Flip Podcast. Every week we take a deep dive into the mystery and stigma behind mental health and explore real-life stories of struggle and triumph. We aim to educate and encourage others as we bring together a diverse group of guests. From the streets to sanctuaries, classrooms to boardrooms, mental health does not discriminate, neither do we. Prepare to laugh, prepare to cry, prepare to be changed. Let's get into it. Hey everyone, welcome back to the Focal Flip Podcast. Today, already waving at the camera, no stranger to the camera. This is my boy Mac McIver. Mac, what's up?
Not much. Glad to be here. Thank you for having me on the show.
Man, no problem, man. So Mac is a comic, an author, a musician. For me, clearly, if you've followed some of my Instagram stuff, I love authors. I love books. I love to read. I love humor. Comedy is a big thing in my life, and I love music. So it's kind of interesting that we've crossed paths, man. You are talented in three of the areas that I really like, and we met each other in some interesting rooms that we probably wouldn't have thought we would have met each other in, right?
Sure. So
why don't you tell us a little bit about Mac and tell us about kind of the times, the good times, and then maybe the fall.
Okay. Well, that's a loaded question. A little bit about Mac. You mentioned kind of the highlights of my passions, which is writing, you know. Yeah. I've always been a poet since I was young, and that blossomed into writing narratives. I became a comic, and then during the pandemic, I turned that in. I've always been a musician, like, you know, not professionally, kind of like a home site sort of thing, you know. And during the pandemic, when comedy went away, that turned into writing comedy music as well. That's out there, you know, on like Pandora, Spotify, that sort of thing.
Wow. That's awesome. So tell me about like you, childhood, growing up.
So I just had, you know, your, for the most part, normal middle class environment with, you know, somewhat dysfunction thrown in there. We didn't all have the Norman Rockwell smiles per se.
We had the calendars.
You know, I may have been at the lake, but everybody was arguing or, you know, there was some sort of toxicity going on there. But, you know, I had a normal childhood, I would say, as far as most people.
Yeah. So tell me about what happened in your life as you were pursuing, and tell me about kind of like the career. Just get me into kind of the choices.
I've had so many dreams. Like, so what started out first was I wanted to be a pilot. Okay, so when I left, when I graduated from high school, I started college, and I was in flight training. I was actually flying airplanes for through the University of Cincinnati and getting college credit for it, and also taking classes. And as the story goes with a lot of my life, relationships were a catalyst for destruction. So, like, I had a relationship go bad, and I turned to alcohol to make up, you know, to fill that hole I was feeling at the time, and my life just fell apart, you know. So that's where that first dream kind of got sidelined. After that, I spent some time recovering, getting my head back together, and I went to technical school, and I got some IT I got a slew actually of IT certifications, and my dream at that time became to become a writer, to become an author. I wanted to write a book. So my plan was to do IT work, so, you know, I could still have a nice life, and start working on my book, and that's what I did. It took a long time. It took a lot of interviewing, and I mean, I interviewed for years to find the right position, but I ended up working in robotics at the Kellogg company in Marymount. Mm-hmm.
Oh wow!
And that was like, it was a tough time because I had my life together on paper, but I was still drinking heavily. And, going home, working all day, going home and writing alone all night and just drinking heavily. At writers, we have this thing which they call the Hemingway defense, which is all writers turn to Ernest Hemingway of being this huge alcoholic.
Yeah.
And if there's any, people out there that want to write, I don't suggest it. It's actually, counterintuitive. Like, you work against yourself. I would create something beautiful and then go back in inebriated and trash it. So I was always taking a step forward, 2 steps back. Yeah.
Wow. Gosh, I bet that would be that's exhausting.
Yeah, it was an exhausting life because I lived alone. I had a nice house and several nice cars and all that.
Yeah.
So I had to work a lot to support that, and then it took a lot of effort to still go and then add a whole bunch of additional time to create a story on top of that.
So when you would go to drink, it just made you feel better at first when you started to drink, or was it?
Yeah, I self-medicated. At the time, it's talking about how that's ruined my life in the beginning. That was what I was doing. I was trying to drown out my emotions, and I did it a lot. I didn't realize then at the time, but I realize now that I had a lot of fear about what I was trying to become, and that medicated the fear. When I drank, it took away all those fears about what I was trying to accomplish.
Yeah, sure. And then while you're also the IT career, carrying all of that, and then wow, what a tussle in your mind.
Yeah,
for sure.
So I got a manuscript completed finally, and I submitted it to Penguin Publishing, actually. And at the same time, it had just been so much stress. I was just so overwhelmed from trying to get everything done that I broke. I broke down, and I went out, and I was around some people that I shouldn't have been around, and ended up using hard drugs for an evening. Okay,
and for an evening.
Well, that's what it was. That's what I mean. I hadn't used any substances like that in like 8 years through all my 20s. Like, I'm almost 30 at this point when this happened, and I hadn't done that. So anyway, I just broke. I went around somebody I knew I shouldn't have. I ended up overdosing that night in my own house. I overdosed. My friend thankfully called the squad and saved my life. They brought me back. But I ended up with charges. I ended up being evicted. And that's when all that prosperity that I've just been talking about, it all fell apart. Oh, wow. Like, things got really bad.
At 30?
It started out It started out as one night, like I said, you said a night. And then I got put in a rehabilitation program where I met someone else that was struggling. And then we ended up going and struggling together for like... All in all, I had about a 4-year span of darkness in the middle of my story. Like, so I told you I lost my house.
I can only imagine what the 4 years were like, too.
I lost my house, and then I went back to using heroin heavily. And, I stopped caring about everything. I let my dream go. So as this is happening, I get my first rejection letter over the novel. And that was kind of just like... the push over the edge, because it was like this dream, all that work for all that time, and everything that I had been, pushing for had kind of just failed. And that was like the ultimate, like, I just let go, I just let go. And I just got, bogged down in addiction for a long time.
Wow. That's fascinating. That would have put me over the top too, just because of the amount of work, especially when you have something you're passionate about, the dreams, and you're already in it.
Yeah.
And that final thing. So tell me about.
Well, I had this sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. I had this
good.
Fairy tale story in my mind. I had this fantasy of how it was all going to go, and like so far up to that point, it had went pretty close, to like what I had imagined. So. It was just hard when it all crashed down, when it seemed so unobtainable.
Wow. So let's get into that. So when it all seemed so unobtainable, you have your breakdown. Tell me about the changeover from when you went from your darkness, like tell me about your darkest part, and then the change. And the change that I want to get to is you end up, comedy is where the second half of this entire episode is going to go.
Yeah.
It's fascinating, and it's just, you do it. So I just kind of wanted that take.
Okay, well,
that darkness first.
There was so much darkness, really.
Changed, and then we talk about comedy.
It's hard to say. It sounded like you were looking for a specific moment, and there were just so many. I had so many days just feeling powerless and just feeling a slave to my addiction, where nothing else mattered. My whole personality changed. The way I treated people changed. My values started being compromised. I always was a pretty good person. I've made mistakes like everybody, especially in my teens and stuff. I did some things I'm not super proud of. But for the most part, I was a pretty good person. And when all that fear takes over, the fear is not having what you're addicted to. That fear controls you. That fear makes you a different person. And you start doing whatever that fear is telling you to do to get what it wants. And so that was a very dark time. There were so many days I woke up and I would have gave anything to walk away from what I was doing and back to where I wanted to be, but I couldn't. My brain was wanting to go one place. And I had good intentions. I tried to go to so many treatment facilities on my own.
Really?
And, I checked myself into a slew of places and would just leave. I'd stay a day, maybe I'd hang on for 2 or something like that.
Yeah.
And then I would just go right back to what I was doing. So there was a whole lot of darkness, and there was a whole lot of, I had a ton of shame accumulating because I'm being someone that that is not me, and that I don't, particularly believe any of the things I'm even doing.
Right.
And, and there's just so much, like, I just beat myself up so much too, because I had fallen so far. So
for me, I beat myself to a pulp.
Yeah.
I just did. I beat myself to a pulp like crazy. I didn't realize I didn't have to beat myself to a pulp as badly as I did. But one of the things that I've found is when I've been completely broken and full of pain, there's nothing that can really cheer me up. It's
pretty difficult. It takes something, very funny to get you outside of wherever you are.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like your insides have become so callous to anything,
Yeah.
You're a funny dude. You have comic at the beginning of your title. And I've known you from a different light, and then I've gotten to know you as the comic and all this talented, solopreneur type person. But tell me about humor. So, like, how does one person go from complete isolation, guilt, shame, remorse, and let's say in the midst of addiction and alcoholism, to humor, comedy, genuine, authentic humor?
So how does a person do that with all that happening? I'd say that's like one of the best ways that a person gets into humor, because I learned to laugh at myself. I learned to laugh at everything around me. In hindsight, all these things that I've experienced, some of it almost seems trivial now, but it certainly didn't feel that way at the time. But I just learned to find, things that were funny. And a lot of the isolation is where a lot of my comedy came from, because I developed this inner dialogue, okay? I'm not around a lot of people or around a lot of constructive people, so I'm talking to myself. And I start developing even these characters, which one of, like, the main character in my book, Heart of the Ark, she's kind of based around my thinking through all that struggle.
Okay.
Like, it's very similar.
Wow. Can you keep elaborating on that?
Well, so that's just where my humor developed. And so when I sat down to write this book, actually, it wasn't supposed to be a comedy. Like, that wasn't what I intended to do. And the more I started writing the story, that's just what came out. And as I was writing it, I started thinking of other things that were funny that didn't really fit the narrative, that were more about my life. You know, I did find a lot of things that were funny and managed to fit them into the story I was telling. But I started making a list of everything else, just a notepad, and I was planning to go get up and be a comic for the first time. Like, that was prior to this fall that I'm talking about. So when I had that time period where those 4 years where everything fell apart, I had a laptop with a whole stand-up routine already on it, ready to go, that I just hadn't used yet.
Wow.
That was just sitting there, like my book, because at the time, it wasn't published either. It was just in the notebook, too.
Okay.
You know, I had submitted it to companies, but I hadn't actually been published yet. And so those things were just sitting there, waiting for me to get myself together. Yeah.
Wow. So what is it? What's your bread and butter with comedy? What is your what is your thing? What are you known for when it comes to your funniness, your humor, your comedic relief?
I like to write a lot of complicated stories. I do like situational comedy. I know I sent you at least one performance that I've done.
You and buddy.
And yeah, and it was, you know, it's just, I like to use things that people relate to, like family and that sort of thing. Like, I believe the title of that video is Crazy Family.
Yeah.
But so that's it all. It's all based in reality to some extent for me. Like, all my jokes start with something that's real to me or that I've experienced, but then I elaborate or exaggerate or, you know, change around.
Yeah, you twist it around.
Right.
Yeah.
Add in things. And yeah.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So let's tell me about how you have found healing through your humor. I guess I look at everything that you do, and it stresses me out.
Me too.
It stresses me out. I look at everything I do, and I realize that I kind of identify with or I'm labeled as, and it stresses me out sometimes, right? With yours, it's like, I've gotten to know you for the last year in the rooms. You're incredibly talented, but being this kind of talented and then having comedic relief, how do you not spread yourself thin?
I absolutely did. That's why I stepped back from, well, there was two reasons I stepped back from performing on the stage so much. One was that the pandemic hit. That's where my comedy music came into life,
okay.
The songs that I have out there.
Yep.
Because stages went away. And like, so I couldn't go perform. I was performing at least 3 times a week, driving around sometimes. I do shows in various local cities, Louisville, you know, that sort of thing.
Wow.
Dayton, drive to the nearest city.
So you've done this kind of big time, huh?
I was like a low level professional. I mean, I was paid to go do spots all over the place, but most of the times where the places they want to take you, I've done shows in like New Orleans and Boston, and I've traveled a little bit, but mostly it's just been local. The problem, I've been offered shows that I had to turn down all over the place in California and all kinds of places like that because they don't want to pay you to do it enough. Like I'm going to break even on going on the trip by the time I pay for my own airline flight and all that. Yeah. I wasn't to the point to where I'm like organized with a tour or anything like that. Yeah. Yeah. To where that starts to make sense economically. You really have to have a well-established tour. And I wasn't in it that long. Wow. But, I had to step away from that to publish the novel, to finish that up. Wow. Because there was just so many things, that, I designed all these graphics myself, all this lettering, all this, I designed this emblem. And like on the interior pages, like all this, all these pages I did by hand, like adding in all these graphics and lines and everything. And so it's very time consuming. Yeah, so I had to pick a thing. I had to pick because I'm releasing music. I'm releasing a novel. I'm performing on stages. Dude. I had to pick a thing. Because it is overwhelming. So
you're more thin than me. Like I gotta learn. Like I've caught myself kind of going thin. That's what I wanted to know. we've learned each other in some of our healing journey and whatnot. So like, how do you not spread yourself thin going forward with everything you do? Like I called you earlier, or I called you before, and you'll be like on a music song. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's,
your direction will go one other.
I'm releasing.
And I kind of do that too. So
I'm getting ready to release another song. It's called "Say Something Else." It's like a romantic comedy. I have a comedy album that's actually, it's all done. Several of the singles have already been released. The full album hasn't been, I haven't finished producing it yet, but it's ready to go. I don't know if I'm going to produce that or not anytime soon. But how do I keep myself from spreading too thin? I'm just taking my time, man. I did way too much, and I've reached burnout, and I've been suffering through that really for about the past year. I felt a lot of burnout. That's what I meant. Like I've just exhausted from everything that I did, and I wanted to sell millions of books already. So it's super cool to be on, that you can pull up Walmart, I'm there. You can pull up Target, I'm there, Amazon, all that. Neat. It's super cool to be in all those places. And honestly, like one of the biggest accomplishments in this, in this story of coming back and winning, like I feel like I have, even though I haven't achieved the level of success that I dreamed of, I'm in the Library of Congress, like not just on the shelf. I have in their digital library, I have music and everything there too. So that's like, I'm already immortal. Like I can just go home now, right? I can just take the rest of however many days I have left.
Immortal now.
I can just nap. Like I don't know. I'm trying to get passion back up. Working on this song again has been wonderful. It's so beautiful. I know I've let you listen to a few of the raw cuts. Talented, so I'm really excited about that. It's like a romantic comedy. There's some punchlines in there. I actually took one of them out at the end because I thought it took some of the seriousness away from the song. The song was written to my partner that I'm with, and it was during a period of time where we were both recovering and trying to get our lives back together, and so we spent a lot of time apart, and so it was just this almost like pining that I felt inside, and almost like this, just like I just wanted to, I wanted to be Romeo, I wanted to write her this song that would make her be like, you're where I'm supposed to be, and so at the same time it's comedy, and there's some lines in there that are meant to be humorous, and I was performing it live, I did it live. Years ago, I wrote this song years ago, and I did it some shows, some amphitheaters around OTR and some bars and stuff like that. And it was fun to do, and it always got a good reaction. And I just didn't have a professional recording of it yet. And it's, so the idea has sat on the shelf the last few years while I'm just trying to recuperate. And now's the time, So I've been back working on it for weeks. And
you've been working hard on it too.
It's almost done. So I'm super excited about that. I'll be releasing that soon.
I can't wait till you release it. When you release it, we'll share it too. We'll throw it out there. That'd be awesome.
Cool. Appreciate that.
Hey, no problem. Anything, we've got a couple of minutes left here. Is there anything in particular that you want to share about your healing journey and how you can, offer encouragement to people that are struggling with addiction, alcoholism, mental health, identity issues, all kinds of different stuff? So if you have anything you want to plug on, that'd be great.
It's temporary. As long as you want to get better and you're patient, you can. So there's a quote in this book. You guys have already heard my story about how I was, I went through all those trials. I ended up in the Hamilton County Justice Center for 6 months in the middle of that 4-year period before I came back and got published. And I'm in there with nothing. They take everything from you. And I had this little notepad that someone had given me. And I wrote a quote on it trying to pump myself up, which the quote is, "The future is always on time when we leave the weight of the past behind for the gifts of the present." Okay, and I wrote that to myself in a jail cell, downtown Cincinnati. Life as rough as it could have been. Years later, I put it in my book, and it's published, and now it's available at Walmart.
Say it again.
So...
Say the quote again. I love quotes.
The quote is, "The future is always on time when we leave the weight of the past behind for the gifts of the present." So it's wordplay with obviously
Yeah.
the present is a gift, but that whenever you shed whatever has happened before, when you get that weight off your shoulders, you stop looking back. When it doesn't matter,
I like it.
you're gonna arrive when you're supposed to be.
Yeah,
Like
you wordsmith
it's
that
never
well.
it's never too late.
Yeah,
It's
like-
essentially
It's like the yesterday's history, today's a mystery, tomorrow's a gift
yes.
type thing.
Yes.
Or is that no? Did I get that wrong?
I don't believe so.
Yesterday's history, tomorrow is a mystery, today is a gift. Yeah,
Yeah,
sound like
so
that.
so I
Jeez.
wrote that to myself to pump myself up, and then later on I decided when I was doing the final editing for this thing, it actually wasn't in the story, and I was like, so the character is talking. She's talking to herself, but she's kind of having this conversation with the TV with herself. Like I don't know if anyone else does that, but it's something that I occasionally do. The TV will say something and I'll respond back because it's a thought. Like so, I just talk. It's like talking to myself. But anyway, she's essentially talking to herself, and the TV says that quote at the time when she needs to hear it because you'd have to read the story to get the rest of it. But anyway.
Awesome.
Yeah.
That's great. Mac, I'm grateful. I'm grateful to have you as a friend. I can't wait to see you launch back out as this is your shot at redemption. And I just know how busy you are and how hard you're working at it, but then how much you're helping other people. I'm just grateful for you, man.
Yeah.
I really do. Hopefully we can partner up on stuff and work together on things.
Yeah, we definitely will. I really appreciate you having me out. I've watched
problem.
almost all your episodes, and I support what you do here.
Cool,
and,
man. Thank you.
I hope you guys enjoyed it.
Awesome.
out there.
Thank you. All right. Hey, hit like, subscribe. If you can, hop into some of our social media stuff, make some comments, interact with us. And just if you have questions or if there's episodes you want to see, reach out to me and let me know. Or if there's topics, reach out and let me know. Outside of that, Mac McIver, where all can we find you?
Everywhere. If you Google search, in all the stores, like I listed some of them before, but there's like, I'm on like over 200 platforms online as far as like music and where you can buy books. If you wanna, I do have I've blown this cover up. I'm trying to get it for the camera to see if you guys can see it. I have made a movie-sized poster with this beautiful blue rustic frame, and it's autographed, and I'm giving it away. If you want to go to macmciver.com, that's MACMCIVER.com. There's details about that.
Awesome.
And
there it is, man.
other than that, you can just Google my name or the title of the book, and
That's
there's
awesome.
a slew of places that it's available.
Heart of the Ark. It's awesome. Mac McIver, Focal Flippers, show some love, show some support. We're out, brother. Okay, you ready to wrap this thing up?
If you like Focal Flips videos, my dad's videos, go to YouTube, Spotify, and Apple, and like and subscribe to be updated.
I love it.